This is going to be an interactive tutorial. I want you to feel free to ask questions during the tutorial. If we're going through a slide and I'm moving on to the next one, feel free to stop me to get some clarification on the previous slide. There should be time for questions following the tutorial as well. And ARIN staff will be available to answer any specific questions you have about your particular situation if you don't want to ask that question in a public forum. I'm ARIN staff at the NANOG meeting here. In addition to me is Ray Paulzak, ARIN's president. We have, raise his hand back there, we have Susan Hamlin, our director of member services. Leslie Nobile, our director of registration services. Jenny Listman, our director of engineering. Mohammed Separad, a senior registration analyst at ARIN. And Carl Pena, one of our systems administrators. A few of the items we're going to talk about this afternoon, just some background information about ARIN, some registry activities, talk about the open policy process, our current policies, and before you get to asking your questions, we'll list the top 10 questions that we hear on a regular basis, and I'll go ahead and answer those for you. Now, the RIR basis, Regional Internet Registry, was proposed by the IETF in the early 1990s. Here are two RFCs that you can actually read to find information about that. 1174, the IAB recommended policy on distributing internet identifier assignment, and RFC 1366, guidelines for the management of IP address space. And that was released at the same time as 1367 for CIDR, classless interdomain routing. And these documents provide a rationale for the regional internet registries. It established criteria for the RIRs and set operating guidelines for the regional internet registries. Now, ARIN, the American Registry for Internet Numbers, was previously an IP allocation division of the Internet. There were a small group of people that actually registered IP addresses and AS numbers with the Internet. Then in 1997, ARIN became an independent organization. There was an interest by the community to separate domain name registration and numbers registration. Primary reason being domain name registrations were going to become for-profit. And it was not deemed appropriate to make IP numbers registration for-profit since we're dealing with a finite resource. Currently, we have 1,456 members in our service region of North and South America, the Caribbean, Africa south of the equator, with 70 countries involved there. And our offices are located in Chantilly, Virginia. There are other regional internet registries, of course. We have APNIC, who's served as the Asia Pacific Network Information Center. Their service region is Asia, Oceania, and the Western Pacific. And they're located in Brisbane, Australia. And we have RIPEN CC, whose service region is Europe, the Middle East, Central Asia, and Africa north of the equator. They're located in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. We also have two emerging regional internet registries, LACNIC and AFRINIC. The proposed region for LACNIC is all of Latin America, which right now is being looked at as Central America and South America. And you can find additional information about their plans and what they're doing at lacnic.org. And AFRINIC, the proposed region is Continental Africa. Right now that region is serviced by both ARIN and RIPEN CC. And you can find information about their efforts at afrinic.org. Now, there is we'll go into a little bit later about how the regional internet registries fit into the ICANN structure. But one of the things that the regional internet registries have been working on together is a document for the establishment of new regional internet registries. And a little bit later on, I'll talk about how you can go to the ASO website and find their documents. But you'll find that they have a document there, and you can see what the actual criteria are for the establishment of a new regional internet registry. One of the major criteria for a new regional internet registry is that it'll be continental in scope. So definitely these two proposed regions would be continental in scope. A little bit more about the distribution of ARIN's membership. Told you we have 1,456 members. Almost all of them, or a large majority of them, are from North America. North America being the United States and Canada. We have 1,384 members there. 43 in South America, 16 in Southern Africa, and 13 outside the region. And those 13 outside the region, we haven't allocated numbering resources to those 13 organizations that are outside ARIN's region. We just have an open membership. Organizations can become a member of ARIN without receiving the services of numbering resources. Those primarily come from the 1% of the membership population in Europe and some places in Asia. A bit about the regional Internet Registry model and structure. Regional Internet Registries are bottom-up industry self-regulated organizations. They're open and transparent and neutral and impartial, meaning that the Regional Internet Registry staff do not work for Internet service providers or telcos or companies like that who may be your competitor. We're neutral and impartial to the process, and we're basically the implementers of the policies that are set in the region. And of course, all of our procedures are open and transparent. Our policy process, we're going to talk about a little bit later, show you how that's open and transparent and the way that we actually do business and make decisions. The RIRs are not-for-profit organizations. We're not operating to gain a profit. We're cost recovery organizations. We only assess fees for registration services that will cover the cost of our operations. And our fee structure and things of that sort are reviewed on a regular basis by our membership. So we don't set the fees, the membership does. As I said earlier, the membership is open to all interested parties. So anyone in this room can become a member of ARIN if they would like. If you do request IPv4 or IPv6 address space from ARIN and you receive an allocation, your organization with that gets a membership. Also, our membership elects our Board of Trustees and our Advisory Council. ARIN has a Board of Trustees with currently 6 members. Later this year, with our elections, we'll be adding a 7th member to the ARIN Board of Trustees, so that in cases of where we have a tie on a vote with the board or something like that, there's an odd number in the future with 7, and that wouldn't occur. Also, we have an Advisory Council. That's a body of individuals who provide information on technology, operational issues, and things like that to the ARIN Board of Trustees and to the ARIN staff. And that also is an elected body. And also, membership approves our activities and our budget. ARIN doesn't change their fees without being told to do so by the membership. And we don't add any new services or activities without first discussing that with the membership as well. And most importantly, here is, we do not register domain names. The RIRs do not register domain names. They only register IPv4, IPv6, and AS numbers. Okay, a bit about the formation of ICANN. The U.S. government, a few years back, made a decision to end the management of the global internet, try to take their hands out of that and make it industry regulated. The Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers formed as the industry self-regulatory body. So that's how we have ICANN. I'm sure many of you have heard about ICANN in the news or are very familiar with ICANN. But just a little bit of information about their structure. You see that in the ICANN, we have an ICANN board of directors and a president and CEO, and then we have support organizations in the ICANN, 3 support organizations. The domain name support organization, of which the domain name registry and registrars are part of. The address support organization that is made up of the regional internet registries, ARIN being one of them. And the protocol support organization made up of protocol bodies like the IETF and ETSI. Now you see under the address support organization, you have ARIN, RIPE, CC, and APNIC. And as I stated earlier, there are some efforts in Latin America and Africa to start regional internet registries there as well. And you can keep track of that progress by going to their websites, also by watching the mailing lists on the ASO website and things of that sort. The ICANN also has an at-large membership that many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with. And all of these support organizations in the at-large membership are responsible for electing the ICANN Board of Directors. The regional Internet registries together select 3 board of directors. There will be an election again this year where the nominations have already been made. You can go to the ASO website and you can find a list of the nominees, and you can provide statements of support to those nominees. And I'm going to talk a little bit here about the Address Council for the ASO. The Address Council will vote on who that Board of Trustees or Board of Directors member will be. And also down here you see that there's a root server system advisory committee, a government advisory committee, membership implementation task force, and a budget advisory group. Now the ICANN ASO is formed by the regional Internet registries based on existing and proven regional policy structures. So basically the ASO is ARIN, RIPE CC, and APNIC. And the support of the public, the bottom-up self-regulatory structure of the RIRs, the open policy process of the RIRs, all of those things contribute to the ICANN ASO. The ICANN ASO is responsible for global policy coordination within the ICANN framework. And there's also an Address Council elected by the regional Internet registry communities. The Address Council is made up of 3 individuals from each region for a total of 9 people. Now, nominations and voting for the ASO Address Council is open to the general public. If there's an election that's coming up, you can nominate someone, and you can also vote for someone on the Address Council. And we'll be having those elections again this fall at the ARIN meeting. And just one thing about the second bullet point here, where it says responsible for global policy coordination within the ICANN framework. Now, there are global policies and there are regional policies, okay, for the regional Internet registries. An example of a global policy is with IPv6. The 3 regional Internet registries have a common policy for IPv6 allocations. The criteria is the same across the board. So we consider that a global policy. And we coordinate amongst ourselves and through the ICANN ASO AC. An example of a regional policy will be certain criteria for certain types of things within a region. There are some needs for regional differences within each region. Everything is not a global policy. The role of the Address Council under the ICANN ASO is to be a catalyst in the policy process, not to develop policy. They do not develop policy. You develop policy. And I'll talk more about that a little later. And they just oversee and coordinate the policy development process that is facilitated by the regional Internet registries. They also make recommendations to the ICANN Board of Directors on addressing issues. The ICANN Board of Directors has a question about an addressing issue, or they need some advice. They will draw on the experience and the advice of the Address Council. And as I stated earlier, the Address Council elects 3 members of the ICANN Board of Directors each. Okay, some regional Internet registry activities, including ARIN, address-based management, registration, policy development, and outreach. Talk about those for a few minutes. Okay. Some of the challenges of the address management is address space depletion, specifically with IPv4. Approximately 38% of that resource is left unallocated right now. That is held in reserve by the IANA, Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. So there's a need to keep a close eye on depletion. Historically, there were many wasteful allocations. Some would argue to say that there are many organizations out there today that hold Class A registrations or Class B registrations dating back to the 80s, early 90s, who do not need them. Routing chaos is another challenge. The legacy routing structure and router overload. I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about that at the NANOG meeting this week. And it's always been the case that CIDR and aggregation are vital to what we do, and it's a big challenge. There's been some inequitable management of the address space. There's been some wasteful address space distribution over the last 20 years. So there's a lot of challenges to what we have to do today and what we have to overcome. Some of the objectives that we have in meeting those challenges, one, conservation, the efficient use of the resources. The regional internet registries are in place to ensure that the resource is being used efficiently, that it's not just being wasted and handed out to entities that do not need the address space, so that it's there when your company starts in a few years. And allocations are based on demonstrated need. That's the case with all three regional internet registries. Aggregation is also an objective, limiting the growth of the routing table and issuing provider-based addresses. There's some policies that are provider-based, specifically in the ARIN region, where our minimum allocation size is a /20. That plays into the objective of aggregation. Organizations will only be able to receive a /20 allocation from ARIN and not be able to receive /24s, /23s down the road like that. Hypothetically, although some argue that it's no longer the case, that limits the number of entries on the routing tables. Registration, that's also an objective, to ensure uniqueness. ARIN Whois database, the other registry Whois databases. You can go there and you can find who's registered a resource and not be troubled with a conflict where one organization is trying to announce something and the other one is saying, no, that's my resource. There's actually a Whois database that keeps track of that so that those things don't happen. Fairness and consistency. Everything we do is in the interest of the regional and global communities in regard to policy development. And like I said before, and we'll talk about again later, policy is developed by you. Now, registration, some of the registration activities of ARIN, IPv4 and V6 numbers registration, of course, AS numbers registration. We have a registration call center that will answer any questions that you have about the registration process, and I'll give some contact information on that later. We do reverse delegation in ADR.ARPA. We manage that for our region. We have the Whois directory service that I just talked about, and we also have a routing registry service. If you want to register your routing policies, you can use the ARIN routing registry, and you can go to the ARIN website and find some information about that. We mirror most of the major routing registries, including Merit's routing registry. I'm not going to do a whole lot about statistics. I don't think that was the intent of this presentation, but people always ask the question if I don't do it. So just two statistics here. One is on IPv4, the IPv4 allocation rate in the year 2000, distributed among the three regions. ARIN issued 2/8s during the year 2000 to organizations that submitted requests to us. APNIC issued 1.28/8s, and RIPE and CC issued 1.5/8s. Now, there's been a steady increase over the last several years of how much address space we actually issue each year. An exception to that trend has been the last several months, I'd say about the last 6 months, where we've seen a downtrend in the number of addresses that we're actually issuing. Instead of the chart looking like this, it kind of leveled off and has actually gone down a little bit. Really don't know what has caused that, other than the fact that we've received a smaller amount of requests for address space over that period of time. Some may speculate that some issues with the economy may be responsible for that. IPv4 unallocated, like I said earlier, 38% of all IPv4 address space has not been allocated. It's reserved by the IANA. That address space that is reserved by the IANA will be made available to the regional internet registries in the future to meet your addressing needs. And the last bit of statistics, IPv6 allocations. The registries have been issuing IPv6 address space for 2 years now. There's been a total of 75 IPv6 address blocks allocated collectively among the RIRs. /35s. I don't know how many of you are familiar with IPv6. APNIC has issued 26 of those blocks. RIPE and CC has issued 34 of those blocks. In the ARIN region, we have 15 of those blocks issued. Outreach activities for ARIN and other regional internet registries as well. Training and education. As I mentioned before, we have the registration help desk. If you ever have a question about a policy, or if you have a question about a procedure in requesting address space from ARIN or other things, you can call this registration help desk. There are people there from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, Eastern Time, every day to answer your calls and provide answers to questions that you have. The people who answer the calls are the actual registration services analysts who review your request as well. So there's a chance that if you're having trouble understanding the process and you actually have a request submitted for address space or something like that, if you call the registration help desk, it's likely that you'll be able to speak to the analyst that's reviewing your request. We do a lot of our training and education just through the telephone that way. We talk to people quite a bit over the telephone about the registration process. Standardized registration training programs. We've done tutorials at the ARIN meetings showing people how to request address space or to use the SWIP process. Things of that sort, how to use the templates. Also, we attend many local meetings, some state meetings, ISP association meetings, or a state association of IP or of ISPs will ask us to come and give a tutorial or speak about our policies and our procedures. And of course, we're always glad to do that. We'll go there and we'll speak to people about those things. Also, meetings like this one. We're giving the tutorial here at NANOG. We're glad to give you information about the registration process. Information dissemination. We have a lot of news agencies that contact us and have questions about the registration process or a policy or something like that, and we're always glad to answer their questions. Industry-specific meetings. There are a lot of industry-specific type things going on right now that may show a large demand for IP address space in the future. So we're paying very close attention to what's going on at their meetings and what their requirements may be so that we can address their needs and we can speak to the larger community about what their requirements are. So there's no surprises when some industry comes along like 3G, UMTS, GPRS, that they're going to require a lot of address space, they're telling us. They don't have policies or they can't tell us right now exactly what it is they're going to need or how much address space they're going to need, but they might come across the board and they might need a large portion of what's left. And the rest of the community needs to know about that. So we pay very close attention to industry-specific type meetings. Also, we provide information to organizations or entities like the Government Advisory Committee to the ICANN. There's a representative from each country who wants to participate in this Government Advisory Committee for the ICANN, and they've asked us to come and give them some information about regional internet registries and what it is that we do. And there are other instances of those types of things. Policy development. This is one thing that I want to pay a lot of attention to during this presentation. All policy is developed in open policy fora within an industry self-regulatory framework with consensus of the community and participation open to everyone. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in the coming slides. There's responsive policy development. The regional internet registries try to make policies fair to all. Try to pay attention to the changing requirements of the industries. Like I discussed, the 3G, GPRS, and in the past, cable was a case. And the regional internet registries understand that there is an evolution of the process and that something that may be true today about numbers registration may not fit tomorrow. So we always keep our ears open and hear what the community has to say, and we make the policy process open to you so you can affect changes. Technical challenges in policy development. It's a high level of planning and expertise required to consider these policies. We gain a lot of that from our address council or our advisory council that I talked to you about earlier. but also we rely on other people within the industry like you who may be able to give us information on these things, specifically on our mailing list that would help us form a policy. And of course, we're always looking to meet the demands of the changing environment. Now, I know that you're not going to be able to read this, but what I'm going to do is bring it up somewhere else here. This is you can go to the ARIN website and find the Internet Resource Policy Evaluation process. You can go there and see what the process is to recommend a change to policy, to recommend a new policy, and actually be a part of that process. Generally, what it involves is someone from the community either going to one of our mailing lists and posting something to the mailing list, calling something to everyone's attention that way. It might be speaking to the registration staff or to us after this meeting here, things like that. And you know, we can help you through the process of actually bringing the issue that you have out into the open to see if there's a consensus on your idea for a policy change or something like that. And you can submit that to the ARIN staff, and we can post it to the list, or you can post it to the list yourself. We also have 2 public policy meetings each year where we talk about public policy, IP address-based policies, and other things. We talk about the policies of our database. Everything that has to do with ARIN, you have a say. You can come to the ARIN public policy meetings. They're 2 days long, and you can give us feedback. Your feedback is the most important element of the process. You can also give us feedback on our mailing list, and I'll be showing you the mailing list here in a minute. But I also have brought with us some Internet Resource Policy Evaluation Process pamphlets, and I have about 50 of them sitting on the floor down here. Feel free to come by and pick these up. It explains the policy in detail, the process in detail, so that there are no questions. And also you'll find the flow chart on the website here, and this of course is also made available in Spanish. Here are our public mailing lists. We've got our public policy mailing list where discussions about any type of policy, general policy, can be discussed. Our IP allocation policy mailing list, where we specifically talk about IPv4 policy related issues. Virtual Web Hosting Committee, it's a mailing list that we have. ARIN instituted through community consensus a policy on virtual web hosting some time ago, and there was a lot of discussion in the community after that happened. So we started the ARIN Board of Trustees with the advice of the Advisory Council, suspended that policy. It's still in a state of suspension right now. And we created this working group, or this committee, where people can freely come and subscribe to the mailing list and give their feedback so the Advisory Council could craft a better policy, because there was some concern that the policy that was there was not a good one. And that's being worked on now. Database Implementation Working Group, where I'll describe what we're talking about on some of these lists on the next slide. We also have a Community Learning and Education Working Group, where we actually discuss occasions like this one. You know, if you're gonna go to NANOG and you're going to present some information to people, what is it that you want us to present? Do you want us to go to state associations and speak to people there? Do you want us to do something different than that? We take a lot of feedback from the community on this mailing list about that. Routing table measurement and analysis has received a lot of traffic this year, where the routing table size and how IP allocation policies may have an impact on that. Those things are discussed on that mailing list. You know, please visit our website and subscribe to these mailing lists if you have an interest in these things, because it would be terrible if a new policy was being discussed and it had an impact on your business and you weren't part of the process, you weren't on the mailing list, you weren't attending the ARIN meetings where policy issues are discussed. So please participate. If anything, you can go to the archives that are available on our website right here at this URL, and you can just read the archives from time to time. Or also, you can go to the front page of our website under announcements. If there's a big policy discussion going on and we're posting a final call to a list about a policy recommendation or something like that, that'll be announced under the announcement section of our website. So visit our website or look at the archives, or just subscribe to the list. Some of the recent mailing list discussions that we've had, the IPv6 working group, we've talked about IPv6 allocations for exchange points recently. ARIN has a policy for exchange points that is specific to exchange points, and when speaking about IPv4. That policy has not been written for IPv6, and we're having a discussion now about a possible policy for exchange points in IPv6. Also, we've talked about the IPv6 reassignment policy on our mailing list and at our meetings. Received a lot of good feedback from people on these issues. The IAB-IESG had made a recommendation of a /48 reassignment size for certain types of entities, and also /64s for some cases, in some cases a /128, and in other cases multiple /48s, 47, 46, whatever the case may be. But that's a very important discussion that's been going on. On our public policy mailing list, right now we're discussing single organizations with multi-home discrete networks. As we talk about the existing policies of ARIN here in a few minutes, you'll find that, if you don't already know, that organizations who have already been allocated address space directly from ARIN, when they come back to request additional address space, have to demonstrate 80% of what they've been allocated has been efficiently utilized before they can get more. And this is, according to some organizations, causing problems for single organizations with multi-home discrete networks. And one of the issues involved there is that these organizations may have multiple data centers throughout the country. And there's a need to assign at least a /20 to each one of those, because they're discrete networks, they have different routing policies, and if they don't give a /20 to that network, the rest of the world might not see it, you know, so they're going to give a /20 to that network. Then they're running into some difficulty with our policy of 80%, in that they have some data centers that grow at a faster rate than other data centers. So if they have 4 data centers and they give a /20 to each one of those, and their allocation from ARIN was a /18, one data center has grown very quickly and requires additional address space, but the other ones have not grown as quick. And they have to come to ARIN to request additional address space because they have no other address space to redirect to that data center, because everything needs a 20. And they can't meet our policy for requesting additional address space. So that puts them in a tough predicament. What organizations have done in the past is they said, well, this data center can stand alone and justify address space from ARIN as a separate entity. And they'll open up what we call a separate maintainer account just for that data center. So it doesn't have to rely on these other data centers' growth to get the additional address space that it needs. And what happens there is these organizations, who normally would only have to pay registration fees of maybe $5,000 a year, end up opening multiple accounts with ARIN to get around this policy issue, and instead they're paying us $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year in fees. So we're having a discussion about that on our mailing list right now, so go and participate in that if you're interested. I had already talked about the virtual web hosting working group and the name-based web hosting policy that's been discussed there. And I believe a final call had gone out to that list not too long ago, and that the advisory council right now is contemplating a policy recommendation to be sent to the ARIN Board of Trustees. So we may see a new policy on that here shortly. Database working group. We're talking about reassignment options on the mailing list right now. The 2 available reassignment options now with ARIN are you either report your reassignment information via SWIP, or you place that information in our WHOIS server, and the ARIN staff will go and they'll find your reassignment information there. There's been some interest in perhaps adding another reassignment option, an IRR type, and distributed, or taking one away perhaps. People have discussed dropping support for our WHOIS. This is something that's being discussed there. Please go participate. Also, we're talking about our database redesign. ARIN's database schema is under redesign right now, and in defining the requirements for that, the ARIN engineering department will post questions to the database working group mailing list to gain your feedback and try to find out what direction you'd like us to go in with a particular item. Okay, now I'm going to go straight to the criteria. ARIN's minimum assignment size is a /20. I'm sure all of you know that that's the equivalent of 16 old Class Cs, or approximately, I think it's about 4,000 addresses. And in order for an organization to obtain IPv4 address space from ARIN, they have to meet one of a few different criteria that we have, and I'll discuss those. One is an organization will, just before I go through this, how many people here already have address space directly from ARIN? Please raise your hand. Who doesn't have address space directly from ARIN? Who's planning to request address space in the near term from ARIN? Okay. One of our criteria, an organization would demonstrate efficient utilization of a /20 from upstream. This is address space that they've received from an upstream provider that they're likely getting transit from. It doesn't have to be a contiguous /20. It can be a bunch of little /24s and 25s and all of that. It just needs to add up to a /20. An organization needs to demonstrate that they're actually using that. They need to report their reassignment information via SWIP or place it in an RWhois server, just like everyone else. And they'll provide utilization information to ARIN about dial services that they may be providing, web hosting services, and like services that they're providing to their customers. Now, if an organization is approved for address space and they're already using a /20 from upstream, there's not a requirement for them to have to do any renumbering under our current policies, unless you come to us and say, I have this /20 from my upstream, I have this total of a /20 from my upstream providers, and I want to request address space from ARIN. I need address space for my growth. I also need address space to renumber out of this /20 from my upstream. I no longer want to use that. So you may be justified for a /19 in that case, a /20 for your renumbering project, a /20 for your growth. But one of the stipulations to an approval like that is that you have to complete your renumbering, if you're given address space for that, before coming back to ARIN to request additional address space. Okay. Now, we also have a multi-homed policy. Instead of showing efficient utilization of a /20 from upstream, in this case you would show efficient utilization of a /21 from upstream, and demonstrate that you're multi-homed, that you have multiple providers, and that you have BGP speaking relationships with them, you have an AS number. Under this policy, renumbering is a requirement. You would be allocated a /20, /21 for renumbering, a /21 for growth. And before you came back to request additional address space from ARIN, one, you'd need to demonstrate you've completed that renumbering and return that address space upstream. And also that you're at 80% of the /20 allocation you receive from ARIN, efficient utilization. And a little after I go over the criteria, I'll go to our website and I'll show you where all the request templates are and where all the criteria are listed. But the template that you will use to submit your request as an ISP is the ISP network template. There's a policy that I'll go on our website and I'll talk about some other policies that we have that are not so general, that may be specific to certain types of organizations here in a few minutes. Request criteria for requesting additional IPv4 address space. We've talked about that a little bit already, but an organization needs to demonstrate prior allocations they receive from ARIN are efficiently utilized to 80%. They need to place the reassignment information. And reassignment information, when I say that, what I mean is if you have downstream customers that you're assigning or allocating address space to, that is a /29 or shorter prefix, you need to report that information via SWIP or RWhois. SWIP is a shared WHOIS project, That's basically a template that you would fill out and you would send to ARIN, and that reassignment information would actually be reported in ARIN Who Is for everyone to see, including the ARIN staff when they're evaluating your request for additional address space. An R Who Is server is a bit different than what you'd see in SWIP, but what it is a local implementation of that. You can run your own local server and keep that reassignment information there. Maybe feel like you'll have a little bit more control over your data, whatever the case might be. But you would give a referral to ARIN, so that for this /20 that your organization has, you're letting us know that all your reassignment information is at this host, running on your R Who Is server. And we'll actually report that information via Who Is, so organizations who, for operational purposes, need to know who's using a range of addresses will be able to go to ARIN's website and see that, okay, this large ISP A has this block of address space, but to find more specifics, it'll give them information on how to query your local R Who Is server, and they'd be able to go there and find the reassignment information and find the more specific user of the addresses. Also, you have to give us all of your utilization data that's not considered a reassignment, like your dial services and things like that. You have to adhere to any renumbering that you agreed to in receiving your prior allocation. That's definitely checked when you come back to request additional address space. You need to indicate your 3-month need for IP address space. ARIN, as Regional Internet Registry, issues address space to organizations based on a 3-month requirement to ISPs and telcos who provide services to downstream customers. Now, there may be instances where you'll receive an allocation that will last you more than 3 months, but the intent is that you would not receive an allocation that is smaller than what you needed in a 3-month time frame. And to request additional address space, you would use the same template that you used to submit your initial request, the ISP network template. Now, ARIN also issues IP address space to large end-user organizations who are large enough to justify a /20 directly from the registry. They're not very frequent, the requests we receive. There are cases where we do receive a request from an end-user organization. An example of that might be a large university, a large corporation. They'll come to us and they'll be able to show us that their network requires a /20 and it is connected to the global internet. And we'll make an allocation to that type of organization. Type of information that they need to provide to us is their immediate and one-year addressing plans, a description of their network topology, and a description of their plans for routing the address space or announcing the address space. And in that, there's a lot of data that we need from these folks. And the reason we request much more information from these types of organizations than we do from an ISP, like an ISP who's submitting their request to us for the first time, is an ISP is demonstrating they've already efficiently utilized address space from an upstream provider. They're showing us that they have the practice, they know what they're doing, they're being efficient, they're not wasting address space, and they know about ARIN policies and guidelines. So the criteria may seem a little less stringent for organizations like that, but we do request quite a bit of information from organizations requesting as end users. Their request must demonstrate an immediate need for 25% of the block they're requesting and a 1-year need for 50% of the block they're requesting, as outlined in RFC 2050. RFC 2050 is one of the RFCs that the registries take a lot of their practices from. If you're interested in the Regional Internet Registry System, that would definitely be a good RFC to read. Of course, you can go to the IATF website and find that RFC, or RFCs that are specific to the activities of ARIN, you can find in the library section of the ARIN website as well. Okay, now IPv6 policies. There are 2 phases to IPv6 policies, and these are global policies. So all 3 regional internet registries operate under the same policies here. The bootstrap phase is the phase that we're under right now. It's transitional and temporary, and it concludes after the first 100 sub-TLA IDs. I should have taken that out because that language is changing. We're taking that away, but the first 100 /29s or /35s have been allocated worldwide, or after ARIN is allocated for our region, 60 of those blocks of IPv6 address space. So once collectively, all 3 regional internet registries have made 100 allocations to organizations, the bootstrap phase is over. Or for a specific registry, if you do 60 in your region, it's over for your region. And it's possible that the other registries only have a handful and it may not end for them. Then we also have a general phase criteria. And that's the phase that we go into after the bootstrap phase is concluded. It's likely the bootstrap phase will conclude by the end of this year. So I'm going to tell you what the criteria are. Take a look at that. Also, to our IPv6 working group mailing list, we've just posted an item of discussion for the community, and it was basically, do you feel the bootstrap phase needs to be extended? So if you're going to be requesting IPv6 address space, and you find that the bootstrap phase criteria are more fitting to what you can justify to ARIN right now, you may want to participate in that discussion and say, yes, I'd like the bootstrap phase to be extended. Bootstrap phase criteria. You've got 4 numbered items here. You need, to meet the criteria, you have to meet 1 and 2 and either 3 or 4. 1 is BGP peering relationships with at least 3 other public ASs, IPv4. 2 is you demonstrate demonstrate that you're going to be using IPv6 address space, providing services within 12 months. So basically you're just showing us your 12-month plan for putting V6 into production and issuing it to your customers. Okay? Then it's 3 or 4. Must be an IPv4 provider to 40 sites that would merit a /48 IPv6 allocation under our current criteria. So basically, you're an IPv4 provider and you have 40 downstream customers who do some subnetting and stuff like that. Okay? Or number 4, 3 months of 6-bone pseudo TLA experience and an overall 6 months participation in the 6-bone project. For those of you that don't know, if you are interested in IPv6, but not for production right now, you can go to the number 6, BONE, I believe it's .net, and you can find information there about the deployment of IPv6 address space. You can even request and receive a pseudo TLA. That's a block of IPv6 address space that you're not going to be able to use on the production IPv6 network, but this is something that you can just test with and work with other organizations in your testing. If you go there and you get some experience with that, that's part of meeting the criteria under the bootstrap phase. Okay? So the criteria for requesting this doesn't seem to be too complicated. The general phase criteria takes place or goes into effect after the bootstrap phase is over, and like I said, that is likely to be towards the end of this year, unless we make a decision to extend the bootstrap phase. And what changes is, you have 3 numbered items, you have to do 1, and then you either do 2 or 3. 1 is BGP peering relationships with 3 other IPv6 networks. Before it was IPv4 networks, now you have to show out peering relationships with IPv6 networks, or with networks who are providing IPv6 services, or announcing V6 space. And either 2 or 3. 2, that you must have reassigned addresses from upstream providers to 40 customer sites, meaning I've gone to my upstream provider and I've obtained a block of IPv6 address space from them, and in turn I have gone and reassigned some of that address space to 40 customers. Okay, that's part of meeting criteria. Or the requesting organization must demonstrate a clear intent to provide IPv6 services within 12 months. Again, this is your plan that you provide to us. The plan isn't, I plan to provide IPv6 services in 12 months. That's not the plan. You give us a detailed plan of your schedule and how you're going to roll out these services. Okay? All right. Any questions about the IPv6 criteria? Okay. What's that? All of this is on the ARIN webpage. Here towards the end, because I think we're going to have plenty of time. What am I on? 33 or 39. What I'll do is I'll go to the ARIN webpage and I'll point out some of the things of interest that we've talked about today and where you can find this information on the ARIN website, okay? Okay, request criteria for AS numbers. Pretty simple. An organization either shows they have a unique routing policy or that they're going to be a multi-home site. And then being a multi-home site, you need to tell us you're going to become multi-home immediately. Basically, you're already working with your upstream providers and you're setting up your relationships with them. And some of the information that you have to give us, tell us what exterior gateway protocol you're going to be using, the IP network addresses that will make up the AS. So if you're using address space from an upstream provider and you're going to be making that announcement with multiple providers, just tell us what the address space is. It doesn't have to be address space obtained from ARIN. And you need to give us the technical point of contact information for each of the upstream providers/peers, including their full name and their email address, because we'll likely go to them and speak to them and say, hey, are you provisioning services for this organization? They're requesting an AS number, and they'll send us an email back and say, yes, not a problem, and it's not a problem. You get allocated or assigned an AS number. Okay, now I'm going to go straight into the top 10 questions. These are the top 10 questions that ARIN receives at the registration help desks, at meetings like these, when we're just talking to folks after a presentation and things like that. So maybe your question's in here, but if not, I can answer some other questions afterward. The most common question is, can I have a copy of ARIN's database? Until recently, the answer has been no. You can't have a copy of ARIN's database. The public in ARIN's region, the community, has told us, no, we do not want you giving out copies of the ARIN database to organizations. There's some fear that marketing organizations will get a hold of it, and it would just be a disaster. So we talked about this at our last two meetings and said, well, we want to provide some sort of copy to organizations that need it, if they can show us they have a need for it. And the community has responded in saying that you can give a copy of the database to research organizations, okay? And stripped from that data will be any point of contact information. Now, the regional internet registries collectively have been working together on a statistics project on taking all of our statistics about registration and putting them in a like format so research organizations can just go grab that information from RIPE, APNIC, and ARIN and put it all together and do what they need to do with that data without having to worry about the different format that it may be provided in one region or the other. That information is available on our FTP site now. More extensive copy of our database, again, minus the point of contact information, any point of contact information, is available to research organizations who request it. They need to fill out a form that basically states, I'm going to be using the data this way, and they have to identify a responsible individual, they have to sign an acceptable use policy, and all of those things. And if we receive that from them, and they are indeed going to be using that for research purposes, and they've signed the AUP, we'll issue a copy of the database minus the point of contact information to them. Another question that we hear a lot is, how do I change the organization name on my network or AS registration? So say you have, it depends on how your address space was assigned or allocated to you. If you receive your allocation or assignment directly from ARIN, then you would fill out ARIN's modification template and submit that to hostmaster@arin.net, and we'll update any information about your record that you need updated. And I'll go through the website and I'll show you where that information is, okay? If you received your address space from an upstream provider, so basically you've received a reassignment and you have a record in the ARIN Whois database, but it's a reassigned record. ARIN cannot go in and change those reassignment records because they don't belong to us. They belong to the organization that created it. So you would have to work with your upstream provider to get the information changed on your record in the ARIN Whois database because they're the owner of that record. And they would use the process called SWIP that we talked about earlier, the Shared Whois project. They use the SWIP template to create a network. They can also use the SWIP template to modify a network for the downstream customers. Another question we receive is, how do I add an adder servers to my network? Along the same lines as the answer last time. Depends on where you got your address space from. If you got it directly from the regional internet registry, you fill out the ARIN modification template and you identify what the servers are, and we'll update your record to include that information, and we'll send that to the root servers. Okay, so you're an adder works. If you received your address space from an upstream provider, they would have to take care of that for you in the same manner they did with the previous question. Fourth question. Wow, I've heard this one a lot. That criteria do not apply to me. Can ARIN staff change the policy to accommodate my need? No. One of our main goals as a regional internet registry is fairness and consistency. We review every request the same way, under the same criteria, the same guidelines, same policy. Each request equal. We cannot make changes to policies on the fly. Policies are only changed or made by you, the internet community. And you do that through our open policy process by participating on the discussions on our mailing list, attending our public policy meetings, and giving us feedback in forms like this. So no, ARIN staff can't change policies for an organization to fit their needs. Another question, can ARIN stop somebody from sending spam, announcing a bogus route, pinging my network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? No, we can't. We can only provide you registration information. We can report to you that a certain organization has been registered a range of addresses that you may be having difficulty with, but in order to do these things in this question, you have to contact that organization directly, or contact the upstream provider, contact the organization that's announcing the address space. You have to deal through them, because ARIN's not the internet police. We can't go tell organizations not to do things like that. What can ARIN do if I have routing difficulties with the CIDR prefix ARIN allocates or assigns my network? Now, ARIN is a registry. We do not tell the operators, what your routing policy should be. So if you want to filter at /22s or something like that, that's up to you. We can't tell you not to do that. So if ARIN allocates, say, /22 to an organization, and for some reason they're having problems with the routability of that address space, there's really nothing ARIN can do about that, because ARIN does not set routing policy for the operators. You do that yourselves. So basically an organization would have to deal with the entity that's causing the conflict. Now, if by chance the conflict is that there is an overlapping registration somewhere, which doesn't happen, maybe in the past it's happened once or twice, definitely we'll take care of that. Like if we've issued you address space that someone else has already been registered or something like that, we can definitely deal with that. And there may have been some instances where someone is announcing address space out there that has never been allocated to anyone. They're just making these bogus announcements, and you know, the time for that address space to be allocated just happens to come up when it's time for you to get an allocation, and you get that /20, but someone else is already announcing it. You're gonna have to deal with the organization that's doing the bogus route. We would be glad to speak to that organization or to speak to their upstreams and explain why they don't have the authority to announce that address space, and explain the registration issues involved with that. And the last 4 questions that we receive on a regular basis: what is the difference between an assignment and an allocation? Well, in registry terms, an allocation is address space that is issued to an organization that will provide services with that address space, that will further assign it or allocate it down to their downstream customers. Okay? An assignment is address space that is issued to an entity that is the insight. They're only using it for their network. They're not using it to provide services to someone or anything like that. That's the difference between an allocation and an assignment. How long does it take for ARIN to look at my request? Yes. Okay, we're going to have to pause just for a minute so that they can change the tape. Here, just take a minute. All right, thanks a lot. Okay, how long does it take for ARIN to look at my request? Okay, it's ARIN's goal to turn around a piece of email that you send to us within 2 business days. Okay, you send us a general question, or if you send us a formal request for address space or an AS number, it's our goal to turn that around within 2 business days. Okay, that doesn't mean that if you submit a request for address space that you're going to have an approval in 2 days. What that means is you submit your initial request, and within 2 days, someone will look at that request and will either approve it because you provided all the information we need to approve your request, or they'll have to send you back an email and request some additional information from you so that we can approve your request, so that we can qualify you for the allocation. Okay? And that applies to all the types of email that we receive. If it takes longer than that, sometimes we apologize. Don't bombard us on the telephone, although you can if you want. But it's not often that we do go beyond 2 days. And often you'll see a one-day turnaround time. And in the past, and we're working towards it again, you'll see a same-day turnaround on emails that you send to us. It's a difficult task. We're servicing all of North America, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, Southern Africa, with a registration staff of 7 people. So, you know, they work very hard to make sure that you get responses in a timely manner. Does ARIN prefer SWIP or ARWHOIS as a reassignment option? ARIN does not have a preference. ARIN registration staff does not have a preference. It's completely up to you. You can either use the ARIN database and provide your reassignment information via SWIP, or you can run your own local server using ARWHOIS, and we can go find your information there. Doesn't matter to us, your decision. And the last question, does ARIN accept credit cards for registration fees? Of course, there are registration fees because we're a cost recovery organization. And in the past, we hadn't accepted credit cards. And that caused problems for people. Like if you're in a large organization and you're the person that submits the request for address space and you're responsible for address space management, it's not a problem for you to submit the request and meet all the criteria. But when you have to deal with your accounting department that's on the other side of the world to make that registration fee payment, it becomes very difficult sometimes. So it may take you 2 days to get your request approved, but it might take your company a month to make the payment for the registration fee, and you have a problem. So what we've done is we've allowed credit card payments for some of the registrations. So usually you'll have a business card or something like that where you would be able, at whatever discretion your company gives you, make a payment for fees like that or something. Right now we accept credit card payments for AS numbers and I believe memberships. So, but we right now do not accept credit cards for IPv4 registrations and IPv6 registrations. By the end of the year, we will accept credit cards for those things. IPv4 registrations are 4 categories, either $2,500, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 annually. And in the past, we haven't accepted credit card for those because of the high amount of interest or part that the banks take from the registration fee. We didn't think it was fair to the membership. But the membership has told us we don't care. It's better if we can make the credit card payments. And the fact that ARIN is going to lose a little bit of money to the banks on processing these credit card payments, it's not an issue. So we will be accepting credit card payments for all types of registration-related activity by the end of this year. Okay. I just got this common misconception slide. Then I have some contact information, and then I'll go through some of the stuff on the website for you real quick. But three of the most common misconceptions about ARIN is that ARIN staff make up the rules as they go along. This is simply not true. It is our job to make sure that we review each request equally. Every type of organization, be you one of the largest ISPs in the country or one of the smallest ISPs in the country, we review your request equal, okay? And we don't make up the rules as we go along. We implement the policies that are put into place by you, the public or the community within the region. Another misconception is that ARIN is difficult to deal with. I think I'm partial, but I don't think we're difficult to deal with. Some people may feel that when they submit a request for address space to ARIN, that they've got some staff person sitting on the other end trying to disqualify them according to the criteria. Nitpick every little thing that might disqualify them from receiving the address space. I've had people tell me they felt that way. But on the contrary, the actual attitude at ARIN is that we have the criteria, we review each request according to those criteria, but we do everything we can to help an organization meet those criteria so that they can receive their allocation or assignment directly from the registry. That is the attitude we have when we review your requests. Just want to let you know that. And another misconception, we already talked about this, is that ARIN is the Internet police. We're not the Internet police. We provide a registration service. That's all that we do. Some contact information. The help desk that we talked about earlier, phone number here, you can call that phone number anytime, Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and someone will answer your call and will speak to you about your issue. And if the person on the other end of the line cannot answer your question, they'll find someone that can, okay? And if the person on the other end of the line is not answering your question and they're not finding someone that will, just ask them to. They'll be glad to, okay? Hostmaster email. You can send any type of question you want about registration related activity to hostmaster@arin.net. Someone will read your email and will give you a response. We'll answer your question. And any email that you do send to hostmaster@arin.net, we have a ticketing system for request/inquiry tracking. So you'll get a ticket number with every email that you send to hostmaster@arin.net, and we can track that for you. So if you do call up on the telephone or you have a problem or something like that, you can give someone the ticket number and we'll be able to see a history of the correspondence and better help you. And of course, our web address is arin.net. And let's go ahead and go there real quick, and I'll show you where a lot of this information can be found. Now I've got the font as large as it'll go in my browser right now. So, but you go to arin.net, and the first thing you see are announcements. Board approves changes to ARIN bylaws. You can find information about what that change was. You can go see the ARIN 7 meeting minutes and presentations. We had a public policy and members meeting a month ago. You can go see the minutes for that. I told you earlier about the ICANN board nominees through the ASO. You can offer your support to them by visiting this link here. That Internet Resource Policy Evaluation process that is on this pamphlet, please come get one if you need one. But you can go to the website and you can find that there as well. I told you we had a last call out for the name-based web hosting policy. So like I said, if you just want to monitor the front page of the ARIN website, or you want to monitor the archives and a mailing list, you can find out if we have a policy change coming up. Now, registration services, you can go there. We have it separated by IPv4 services and IPv6 services, ASN registrations, just down the list. Choose what you want, but if you want IPv4 services, you'll find all of our policies and guidelines right here. It's all there. You can just go to the link page down and you see everything that we look for, what all of our criteria are. Nothing is hidden. There's nothing that's an internal practice that's policy related or anything. It's all here on the website, and you can find it. And there's a link to RFC 2050. Like I told you earlier, there's also a library here. A lot of the pages are translated into Spanish because we do service the Latin America region right now. So if you need that information in Spanish or your customer needs it in Spanish, you can let them know it's here. General registration information. We go back to the front page of the website, about ARIN. You can find out a lot of the information that we just talked about today there as a reference. See information about our membership. There's a web-based Whois link. We also have Port 43 Whois if you want to do that. I'm sure a lot of you use that. We have a library of a lot of documents that you might find helpful in registering address space with ARIN. We've got the guidelines listed here all in one place for you, and we have our agreements, the non-disclosure agreement, registration services agreement, some facts that you might be interested in, all of the RFCs that are pertinent to registration. You can find them all here, okay? If you're interested in the policy process or things that have taken place at the public policy meetings, you can go to our minutes and presentations link, and you can see every meeting that we've ever had. You can see the minutes there and see what was behind the policy discussion or something like that. Like our most recent meeting was ARIN 7. You can go there, and you've got over here you've got the agenda, and it's easy to use. You'll find what it is on the agenda and pops you right down, and you find all the information you want about it. Then you have a window that shows you the actual slides that were presented there. You can find this for all of our meetings. All of the information that you need in the registration process is available on our website. If you have a problem finding the information that you need, please make use of the telephone and call the registration services support desk, or go ahead and send us an email at hostmaster@arin.net, or ask us at the various meetings that we attend. We attend a lot of meetings. We try our best to make ourselves very visible so we can answer your questions if you have them. Feel free to ask us any questions that you have. Okay? And my last slide, of course, is a question slide. Does anyone have any questions they'd like answered? Now, if you have a question that's specific to your organization that you want everyone else to hear, I'll be glad to answer it for you after this tutorial. And we also have some other ARIN folk here that would be glad to do the same thing. But if there's anything that you'd like to ask now, please do so. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the question was, I was talking about some of the mailing list discussions, and I had said something about the possibility of dropping our Who Is support. There is a discussion going on right now about ARIN's reassignment options. At previous meetings, our public policy meetings, we've asked the community, what type of service do you want us to provide for our Who Is? And it's all the way across the spectrum from stop supporting it. We don't want ARIN to consider it a reassignment option any longer. Of course, you have very large organizations that use it that say no, continue to support that. So we're going to continue to support that as long as the community tells us to. But there is a proposal on the board or on the list to add another reassignment option, and that reassignment option was the IRR option, routing registry type distributed registry information. So there's an interesting discussion going on there. If you have an interest in changing the reassignment options, please participate. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I heard a rumor about IPv6 cyberspace for imagers that after it was redrafted and all the other stuff that happens, that no one's going to be able to get anything, at least in any site, any frequency larger than or shorter than a /64. And I just want to know
that organizations would not be able to get anything larger than a /64? Okay, the default allocation size from the regional internet registry to organizations right now is a /35. Okay. Right now, organizations that request their address space from their upstream providers, there's 2 of the regional internet registries, RIPE and CC and APNIC, have accepted a recommendation by the IESG to make a policy for reassignments for IPv6. One being that organizations who require IPv6 address space that would have some desire to do some subnetting or something like that, like a general business customer or something like that, would receive a /48. Okay. Some other organizations who show a complete disinterest in ever doing any subnetting or anything like that, that I just got this machine that I need a number or something like that, then they may receive a /64 from their internet service provider. In some instances, perhaps a dial user or something like that would receive a /128. If there was an enterprise that was using an ISP services and a /48 was not enough for them, there is certainly room in the recommendation for ISPs to allocate perhaps a /47 or a /46 to that organization to meet their requirements. Okay. As I said, the APNIC and RIPE and CC regions have accepted that recommendation. The ARIN region has been discussing it at our meetings, and it is likely that we're having a discussion about it on our mailing list, as I discussed. It's likely that the advisory council will be submitting a last call and recommendation to the ARIN last call for more discussion, but then we'll be sending a recommendation to ARIN Board of Trustees to accept that recommendation from the IESG. It's very likely that is going to happen very soon. But I can't say it for sure because I don't make the policies, you guys do. Someone comes out, if you guys all want to come out and speak in opposition to it, feel free to do so, and that may not happen then. But I believe consensus states that it will happen, so it's likely you'll see that here in the next month or so. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much for your time.